everybody. Is it a reason why you guys are not paying whatever that vendor is?
What was it for?
It was for
The small Illinois village of Dolton is embroiled in a political crisis that feels like something straight out of a scandalous novel. At the center of the storm is embattled Mayor Tiffany Henyard, once hailed as a trailblazer for becoming Dolton's first female mayor. However, her historic tenure has been marred by allegations of corruption, financial mismanagement, and abuse of power that have thrown her administration into disarray. Critics accused Henyard of consolidating power by appointing unqualified allies to key positions, misusing state funds for personal indulgences, and prioritizing self-interest over the needs of her community. These accusations have divided Dolton's residents, leaving many disillusioned and questioning her leadership. Tensions escalated even further when Henyard's own romantic partner unexpectedly testified against her. His testimony has lent credibility to the allegations of misconduct, further fueling public outrage. The stunning revelation of betrayal has intensified the community's anger, with many residents now venting their frustrations in public forums. These forums have become a stage for residents to voice their feelings of betrayal, not just by their mayor, but also by a system that allowed her rise to power. Henyard, on the other hand, has dismissed the accusations, calling them baseless attacks orchestrated by her political enemies. She maintains that she is the victim of a plot designed to undermine her administration and derail her vision for the future of Dolton. Despite her steadfast defense, Henyard's credibility has been increasingly called into question. Her loyal supporters are struggling to explain away the growing list of allegations, which include embezzlement, unethical appointments, and the misuse of taxpayer funds. Critics point to examples of lavish personal expenditures funded by public money, further tarnishing her reputation. Meanwhile, Henyard's detractors argue that the scandal is a symptom of deeper systemic corruption within her administration and a failure to prioritize the well-being of Dolton's residents. The situation has been made even more complicated by the ongoing legal battle, particularly the high-profile testimony from Henyard's partner. This has turned the political crisis into an all-consuming spectacle, overshadowing any remaining trust in her leadership. What once seemed like a promising rise to power now appears to have been built on a foundation of manipulation and self-preservation. Henyard's attempts to refocus the public's attention on her accomplishments, such as local initiatives and community programs, have been overshadowed by the mounting wave of scandalous revelations. As the crisis deepens, residents who once supported Henyard are now grappling with disappointment and frustration. The scandal has revealed a leadership style that some argue is rooted in personal indulgence rather than genuine service to the community. Local residents are calling for an investigation, demanding that accountability be restored in order to rebuild the trust that has been eroded under Henyard's leadership. The mounting pressure has led to confrontations at recent board meetings, where residents voiced their anger and disappointment. Many have called for Henyard's resignation, labeling her a self-serving leader who has failed to deliver on her promises of reform. As Henyard continues to defend her administration, the scandal shows no signs of abating. The growing list of accusations and Henyard's increasingly tenuous position in office leave Dolton in a state of perpetual uncertainty. What once seemed like a hopeful period for the village is now overshadowed by a dramatic and unpredictable political saga.
Peter, I've got some books in here. Inside I have from the United States District Courtroom.
Mayor Tiffany Henyard's leadership in Dolton has been marred by a dramatic and controversial downfall, largely driven by accusations of illegal appointments and blatant disregard for governance rules. Critics and legal experts have pointed to her appointment of key village officials, including a village attorney, police chief, and village administrator, without following the necessary legal approval process. These appointments were made without obtaining consent from the Board of Trustees, as required by local governance regulations, effectively bypassing the legal process entirely. When a judge blocked these appointments, citing that they did not meet legal standards, Henyard doubled down instead of addressing the issue. She continued to surround herself with individuals deemed unqualified or lacking the necessary authority to hold these important positions, openly defying judicial orders and governance norms. This defiance wasn't subtle. It was bold and confrontational, which left many residents and legal observers shocked by her apparent disregard for the rule of law. Rather than stepping back, Henyard appeared to treat the judge's ruling as a challenge, continuing to push for her vision in the face of growing opposition. Critics argue that her actions created a rift between her administration and both the judicial system and the Board of Trustees, which has only deepened the political turmoil in Dolton. Her tenure, once celebrated as historic due to her status as the first female mayor of the village, has now become synonymous with controversy, power struggles, and legal battles. The community, which initially supported Henyard for her progressive promises, has been left to grapple with a disillusioning reality. Many former supporters now see her leadership as more about asserting dominance than serving the needs of the town. As the legal challenges mounted, residents watched as their mayor's actions seemed to blur the lines between ambition and carelessness. Henyard's increasingly unilateral approach to leadership has made it clear that she values control and personal power over collaboration or accountability. Despite mounting criticism, Henyard has insisted that her decisions are motivated by a vision for progress, framing her detractors as politically motivated forces attempting to undermine her agenda. However, as her actions continued to alienate those around her, the scrutiny only intensified. Her refusal to adhere to basic governance norms, particularly in terms of appointing officials, has raised serious questions about the long-term consequences of her leadership. The situation has become a spectacle, captivating and alarming Dolton's residents as they watch their once promising mayor descend into a state of open defiance. Henyard's leadership style, which seems to thrive on confrontation rather than collaboration, has exacerbated tensions between her administration and the Board of Trustees. Her controversial appointments and public clashes with the board have only heightened the sense of division in the community. As the mayor continues to stand her ground, many critics argue that her behavior signals a leader more focused on personal control than on ensuring transparency and accountability within the village's government. This ongoing saga has left Dolton's future uncertain. Whether Henyard's defiance leads to her ultimate downfall, or she somehow survives the legal and political storm, the consequences of her actions will likely reverberate through the village for years to come. The story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and the potential collapse of public trust when leaders prioritize personal control over the integrity of governance. As residents watch this unfolding drama, they are left caught between disbelief and concern. Henyard's actions raise important questions about the balance between strong leadership and the need for accountability. For Dolton, this situation underscores the delicate line between hope for change and the stark realities of political unrest, leaving the community to reflect on what kind of leadership they truly need.
The way that the government always does it is to go and investigate people around her.
Mayor Tiffany Henyard's alleged actions have sparked intense controversy in Dolton, revealing a pattern of behavior that many critics argue goes beyond simple negligence. Instead, these actions suggest a systemic prioritization of personal gain over the public good, with residents and local watchdogs raising concerns that Henyard's alleged misconduct may extend far beyond financial mismanagement. Critics believe that her connections to influential figures and loyalists within her administration may have shielded her from accountability, allowing the alleged abuses to go unchecked for far too long. The damage caused by these allegations extends beyond financial concerns. The very fabric of Dolton's community spirit has been torn apart, with anger and frustration building as residents demand transparency and accountability from their elected officials. Public forums have become heated, buzzing with calls for reform and deeper scrutiny of the systemic issues that allowed Henyard's actions to persist. As these revelations unfold, conversations about corruption within Dolton's leadership have intensified, highlighting the stark contrast between Henyard's alleged misconduct and the pressing needs of the community. Henyard, however, has fiercely denied the allegations, claiming they are part of a politically motivated smear campaign designed to undermine her vision. Her attempts to deflect the accusations have done little to calm the rising tide of discontent, with her explanations seen as inadequate by many. In particular, her connections to key figures in Dolton's political landscape have come under heavy scrutiny, as critics suggest these ties allowed her to maintain power and evade accountability for her alleged abuses. The testimony provided in court has further fueled demands for justice, with calls for thorough investigations into Henyard's conduct and the broader practices within her administration. As new details emerge, the town is left grappling with questions about the depth of the corruption that may have permeated other areas of governance. Residents and observers are questioning whether Henyard's influence has undermined other pillars of Dolton's leadership, leaving the town in a state of political and economic instability. The fallout from these revelations is not limited to the courtroom. The scandal has shaken Dolton to its core, leaving the community in turmoil. The witness testimony represents not only an indictment of Henyard's leadership, but a broader condemnation of a system that allowed such misconduct to persist unchecked. The cascading effects of the scandal have left Dolton teetering on the edge of uncertainty, with the future of both its leadership and its governance in jeopardy. As investigations continue, the town is forced to confront difficult questions about the integrity of its leadership and the path forward. Will Henyard be held accountable for her alleged actions? Or will she, like so many others in her position, evade justice? More critically, can Dolton recover from this betrayal and rebuild a government that truly serves its people? The scandal has shattered public trust and highlighted the urgent need for change in the community. Dolton is now faced with the challenge of restoring accountability, transparency, and equity in its leadership to ensure a more just and effective future. The need for reform has never been more pressing, as residents demand a renewed commitment to justice and fair governance. The political crisis surrounding Mayor Tiffany Henyard of Dolton, Illinois, took a shocking turn when her boyfriend, previously seen as a peripheral figure in the unfolding scandal, took the stand and delivered explosive testimony. His revelations added fuel to the fire, exposing personal details that could potentially destroy Henyard's already crumbling political career. The testimony quickly spiraled out of control, with Henyard reportedly becoming visibly enraged and having a full-blown meltdown in the courtroom, shouting at her boyfriend. This outburst not only disrupted the proceedings but also showcased her inability to manage both the situation and her emotions, deepening the perception that she was losing control of her power. Henyard's emotional breakdown served as a stark reminder of her failing leadership, painting a picture of a mayor struggling to maintain authority during a crisis. Her behavior reflected a broader loss of composure, not just in the courtroom, but within the community as well. Dolton residents, already disillusioned by years of financial mismanagement, corruption allegations, and resource manipulation, were further alienated by her erratic response. Social media erupted with demands for her resignation, with one disgruntled resident bluntly calling her corrupt and urging her imprisonment for what they described as traceable crimes. The mayor's inability to keep her emotions in check and her failure to respond effectively to the growing scandal only solidified the community's distrust in her leadership. The more the details of her tenure came to light, the more it became apparent that financial discrepancies were rampant. Transparency was virtually non-existent, and Dolton's leadership had been failing its residents. The testimony from Henyard's boyfriend, coupled with her explosive response, painted a damning picture of a leader more concerned with self-preservation than serving her constituents. Despite the mounting pressure for her resignation, Henyard continued to defy public sentiment. In a surprising move, she showed up late to a village board meeting, held at a local park district building after the usual venue was deemed inadequate for the growing crowd of disgruntled residents. She attempted to assert control over the meeting, delivering a speech as though nothing had changed, but was immediately met with boos and public backlash. Her attempt to push through her agenda faltered when she could not answer key questions regarding questionable village invoices and ongoing financial matters. The hostility in the room grew, and Henyard eventually walked out of the meeting, further angering the community. Her hasty exit only reinforced the perception that she was unwilling to take responsibility for her administration's ongoing issues. In the aftermath of the meeting, reports emerged suggesting that Henyard had violated the state's openness regulations, allegedly manipulating the village's procedures to maintain secrecy around crucial financial documentation. Henyard, undeterred by the growing calls for her resignation, took to Facebook to rally her supporters, posting a cryptic message invoking faith and framing the criticism as part of a political scheme to undermine her re-election campaign. However, Henyard's defense fell flat as more residents, including some of her closest allies, began distancing themselves from her. Despite her attempts to maintain a loyal base, it became clear that support for her was rapidly dwindling. As the year-long federal investigation into her administration continued, more details emerged showing the extent of the damage her leadership had caused, not only to her own political future, but to the town of Dolton as a whole. Federal officials began to scrutinize Henyard's actions, with several of her former allies now entangled in the investigation. Rumors suggested that cracks were forming within Henyard's inner circle, as those who had supported her for years began turning on one another to mitigate their own legal exposure. The once promising leadership of Henyard had devolved into a chaotic political drama, leaving Dolton residents in a state of uncertainty and disillusionment. The community, once hopeful for change under her leadership, now found itself grappling with accusations of corruption, financial mismanagement, and an administration in disarray. As the federal investigation continued and public outrage grew, Henyard's future as mayor grew increasingly uncertain. Whether her defiant attitude would be enough to weather the storm or if the truth of her alleged actions would ultimately prevail remained to be seen. Time would tell if Henyard could salvage her political career or if the growing evidence against her would bring it to a definitive end.
But those invoices lead to more questions, and sometimes we don't get answers to those questions, and so it's not about clickbait.
Tiffany Henyard, the mayor of Dolton, has become the center of a growing political scandal, with a federal investigation looming over her administration. The situation escalated dramatically during a recent court proceeding when her boyfriend disclosed personal information about their relationship, triggering an emotional outburst from Henyard. Her reaction was chaotic, making it appear as though she was losing control of both her temper and the situation. The public, already frustrated with the administration's scandals, took notice, and some residents openly called for her resignation. On social media, one critic accused her of betraying the community's trust, claiming she was as corrupt as they come and should face imprisonment. As tensions grew, Henyard seemed to be struggling to maintain her authority. She attempted to regain control at a village board meeting by arriving late, citing that the village hall couldn't accommodate large gatherings without violating transparency laws. This was seen as an effort to control the narrative around her declining reputation. In a Facebook post, she called on her supporters, referring to them as black sheep and urging them to stand by her. Despite this, it's unclear how many still support her. Henyard's administration has faced scrutiny for questionable expenditures over the past year, which have caught the attention of federal authorities. These revelations, combined with growing unrest in Dolton, suggest that Henyard's time in office may be running out. The mayor's inner circle is reportedly crumbling, and even her closest allies are struggling to defend her. Among the most shocking developments was her boyfriend's testimony in court, which some see as a betrayal. His decision to speak out against her has had a devastating impact on her defense, with rumors circulating that local political figures are plotting to remove her due to her leadership style. The village of Dolton is facing severe financial difficulties, primarily due to reckless spending and a lack of proper oversight under Henyard's leadership. As a result, residents are growing increasingly concerned about the economic stability of their community. Henyard's failure to address these issues has fueled a growing demand for her resignation. The trustees are pushing for her to step down, and the federal investigation is casting a shadow over everything she does. The scandal continues to unfold, and more testimony is expected in the coming weeks. Everyone is watching closely to see how it will all play out. Will Henyard be able to clear her name? Or is this the final chapter of her tenure as mayor? If she is found guilty of corruption, it could spell the end of her political career, even if she avoids jail time. The situation is far from resolved, and the future of Dolton remains uncertain as the crisis deepens. One thing is clear: this scandal will not be forgotten anytime soon. With rumors of more damaging evidence on the horizon, the coming weeks could determine whether Tiffany Henyard's political career survives or crumbles under the weight of the accusations against her. The residents of Dolton, already frustrated with the turmoil surrounding their leadership, are left wondering what will happen next. Will Henyard resign, or will she fight to hold on to her position? Only time will tell how this complex and explosive situation unfolds.